it's long past time that we covered this again. Now, I wrote an article on this years and years and years ago, and it was one of the ones that ended up getting deleted when we transferred from Renaissance Wing Chun to Black Sun Boxing. It just is what it is. I mean, I lost 5 years worth of articles, and I'm still mad about it. But hey, it's not as bad as the Library at Alexandria getting burned, right? So the question that often pops up is, what is martial arts? And we'll get to the rest of the board in a minute, but let's start off with just the simple definition, right? Martial, meaning of the dominion of the god Mars, right? The Roman god of war, going back to Ares, the Greek god of war, and by proxy, any god of war, right? The idea then of martial being just the things that are in the domain of warfare. That's actually a lot, and we'll get to that in a minute. The word art. Please understand that art does not mean arts and crafts. It does not mean creative endeavors. That is a very recent proxy that came about. Do you understand why we call college degrees liberal arts degrees? There is a reason that your bachelor's degree is a Bachelor of Arts. The term art means a learned skill. And that's the Latin side of it, the German side, right? Because English has Latin and German. On the German side of it, we have the word craft, which basically means the same thing. It's kind of a learned skill. Craft is actually closer to the Chinese Kung Fu, but that's another term for another time. And getting to the Chinese just for a moment, the term wushu, people will often point out that in the Chinese, especially like the characters and everything, like the term for martial arts actually means to stop or to defend, right? To stop to stop a spear or to stop an attack or something like that. That's cool, but the truth is that when we say martial arts, what we are talking about are the skills of warfare. And because our martial arts traditions go back to the pre-industrial age, we're generally going to be talking about people who are using everything from hand to hand to swords and sticks and horse-mounted archery and things like that, right? So it is the big, broad, encompassing thing. Well, why do we use the term martial arts in the first place? Because historically, we don't see people just referring to martial arts. We see people referring to whatever specific system they are studying, or even the specific weapon they're studying, or the specific technique they're studying or employing. So why do we start using this term martial arts? Well, I think it actually goes back to more or less Americans having kind of judo fever back in the day. And nowadays we use the term budo, right, which means the way of the warrior. But back in the day, it was bujutsu. And pardon my Japanese pronunciation, I don't speak Japanese. Bujutsu, bu, by the way, is the Japanese of wu. It's the same thing, martial, military, pretty flatly forward. Jutsu, right, same as in jujutsu, right, not jitsu, by the way, but that's another story. And that means a skill. It translates as art because art means a learned skill, but jutsu means a learned skill, and the shu and wushu also means skill. So all of that, what we are talking about there, when we say martial arts, kind of is going back to that idea, right? Because people fell in love with Japanese martial arts, very specifically like judo, early jiu-jitsu, back when the U.S. Army adopted and everything, like the West went nuts for it. Just like the Japanese went nuts for catch wrestling. Interesting kind of thing there. Now, I've seen somebody mention Chaucer before because there's one passage, and I've been looking for this for years. I found it, I just forgot to bookmark it, and then I have not been able to find it again. But apparently there's one passage in Chaucer when he's talking about a knight, and he says the guy's practicing the arts martial. That's not where we're getting martial arts from. It's a cool little thing, but like that didn't catch on. It just flatly did not catch on. We don't speak Chaucer's English, and the fact is that we don't see the term martial arts just start popping up anywhere. Really, the term martial arts kind of, again, starts popping up more around the 20th century, and a lot of that I think is the cultural exchange between Japanese martial artists and Western martial artists. So the question then is, if martial arts is the learned skill of warfare, the military, whatever, and we're talking about that in historical terms as much as we are in modern terms, because we want to be as fully encompassing as possible, well, what does that mean? In my book, that means that martial arts really is conflict resolution skills, right? It is your ability to resolve whatever conflicts come. Now, generally speaking, we are talking physical skills, because generally speaking, you go to war in a physical manner. But right, it does start with information, being able to gather information, being able to avoid bad situations, being able to navigate good, situations for better outcomes, that kind of thing. So information gathering is certainly part of martial arts. And well, look, if you want to pick on everybody's favorite thing to pick on, which is ninjas, ninja martial arts, ninjutsu, was not so much a martial art in the punch kick sort of way, but would have been just, normal Japanese armed combat plus information gathering techniques. And we kind of have some history on this. So, it's information gathering techniques. So yeah, information is definitely part of it, whether you're talking about your ability to observe, the OODA loop, right? Observe, orient, decide, and act, or you're actually talking about formal intelligence gathering. That's all part of it. Negotiation, right? As soon as you are actually interfacing with a potential opponent, being able to negotiate your way through, negotiating for terms of engagement, whether that is implicit or explicit, right? Whether you're trying to negotiate a peaceful exit and not come to blows, negotiation is a massive part of it as well, right? So information and negotiation are actually probably the two primary skills of martial arts. Then you get to your physical offense and defense. What does offense and defense include? Well, that includes everything from using your own personal body all the way up to fully mechanized warfare, right? So, we'll come back to this one in a minute, but we're talking weapons, simple and mechanized, right? Everything, again, from fists, grappling, knives, sticks, swords, pole arms, bows and arrows, spears, guns, bombs, heavy machinery, tanks and fighter jets and aircraft carriers and drones, and all of that is part of what you would consider martial arts. Now, nobody means drone pilots when they say they're studying martial arts, but if you want to be pedantic, yes, that fits. And then groups or individuals, right? Conflict can happen between two individuals, or it can happen between groups of people, or groups of people and an individual. And conflict can happen between parties of all sorts, and we're not going to be including the whole internal conflict between your id and ego or anything like that. Although in the modern day, in the Budo way, we are definitely talking about personal development, because the chances of actual violence happening to you in the real world are so slim at this point that we use it for personal development as much as we use it for self-defense. So that's fair. Now, like I said, I was going to come back up to this, right? Sport and real world. Sport martial arts still count as martial arts, because using things like boxing and wrestling, which, by the way, the military has used before, are things that help you sometimes just on the back end, in the sense of getting used to stress, pain, and just the general feeling of combat. But also sometimes they are actually tangible skills that do translate over. The U.S. military has long had boxing and wrestling programs, as well as their normal combatives courses. So the sport combat is fantastic. And when you're talking about on a cultural level, oftentimes we get children ready to become cultural defenders, part of the military and law enforcement and things like that, by introducing them to sport in the first place. And most sport is based around combat. Even if you even something as wimpy as soccer is technically still based around troop movement and stuff like that, right? So the idea is that now, again, nobody's calling soccer a combat sport, but the fact is that the idea of sport still goes back to that military preparation, kind of like the Boy Scouts, but in different form. And if you look back to like the Spartan agoge, right, and other, Greek schools of, pedagogy and stuff, like a lot of it was developing people to become useful members of society, much of the time which involved joining the military. So that's actually pretty important. And then of course, your real world combat, whether you're talking individual combatives for self-defense, or you're talking more like, subdual and restraint for law enforcement, or if you're talking full-on lethal combat for the military, things like that. So you have non-lethal and lethal in there as well. So the fact is that martial arts, right, is conflict resolution skills, and those conflict resolution skills have to cover that wide range of things. Like, that's what martial arts is. Martial arts is not, punching and kicking and wearing a gi. That's not what it is. Like, that's part of it sometimes for some people, but it's not all of it, certainly, and it's not all the time. Martial arts is a very, very big category. I mean, almost to the point where it's kind of almost a useless thing to say, except that we just have this implicit thing that we are talking about hand-to-hand or close quarters combat when we say we train martial arts. I mean, almost everybody that says I'm training in martial arts is saying either hand-to-hand or close quarters armed combat. They're generally not talking about other things. But if you want to be pedantic, right, everything that involves resolving conflict in the physical world is kind of part of it. And very much so, everything involving weapons and the physical skills of subduing an opponent is definitely part of what we call martial arts. So please don't assume that if somebody says they're doing martial arts, they automatically mean they're doing karate or jiu-jitsu. Martial arts is a much, much bigger thing than that. All right, I am going to get out of here, and I'll talk to you guys later. Good journey. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, share. Check us out on our other socials, and please head over to blacksunboxing.com to get a little more info, including how to contact us. Furthermore, if you are in the Phoenix area, please feel free to stop in, say hi, join in for a class, whatever. Also, if you ever see us cite sources or just for additional content, please check out our Substack. That is where we put all of the sources we use in our videos and is a major part of this. Plus, it serves as a membership platform for long distance learning and for people who would like to support us but aren't local. We would greatly appreciate it if you signed up. Even just the free membership helps us out a lot. All right, I will see you guys in the next video. Good journey.